When you take the SSAT, you're going to need to figure out the meanings of words in two different places. The first, and probably most obvious, is on the verbal section, but you're also going to need to figure out the meanings of words on vocab in context questions on the reading section. Today, we'll talk about what these questions are and how you can answer them more accurately. So let's start off with a definition. What are these vocab and context questions? Well, they're questions that require the reader to determine the meaning of a word specifically as it is used in a passage. Often these are going to be challenging vocab words or potentially words with multiple meanings, and you'll need to identify what the specific meaning is at that point in the passage. An example of a question might look like comports, line 6, most nearly means. Notice that you will typically be given a line number in order to help you find that word in the passage. We have two strategies to help you increase your accuracy on these vocab and context questions. The first one is kind of the preferred strategy that will help you be most accurate, and the second is a backup in case you get stuck. So first, let's take a look at our preferred strategy. If you're going to use this strategy, the first thing that you're going to do is read the question, but not the answer choices. Before you read the answer choices, you're going to return to the passage, cover up the word in the context of the sentence, and reread the entire sentence. Then you're going to come up with your own word to put in place of that vocab word, what it would be the synonym that you think would fit best. Then you're going to match your synonym to the closest answer choice. Now, if you get stuck on this strategy, perhaps you're reading a really challenging passage where you can't figure out what synonym would work best, there is a backup strategy you can use instead. So for this backup strategy, you're going to test out each answer choice by putting it in the place of the vocab word and rereading the entire sentence, and then you'll choose the answer that you think fits best. We keep this as the backup strategy because sometimes on those really tricky vocab and context questions, it's easy to convince yourself of an incorrect answer. The preferred strategy is going to be a little bit more accurate and prevent you from getting distracted by those answer choices that seem like they could be plausible but aren't the ideal fit. Now let's try out these strategies in the context of a passage. Now would be a great time to pause the video and go ahead and read the entire passage so you're ready for the question. Okay, now that you've read the passage, let's take a look at our question. So our question asks, which of the following words could be substituted for rectitude in the last sentence of the passage? Now, don't go on to the answer choices. We're going to come up with our own synonym first. So if we head to the passage, we're going to find the word rectitude in that last sentence right here. Now, if you remember, our strategy is that we need to go back and reread the entire sentence. This is a long one. It's going to start right here and end at the very end of the passage. Go ahead and reread that sentence, and then what would you put in for a synonym to rectitude? All right, what do you think? For me, I would say that rectitude here means something like correctness or maybe goodness, right? We're talking about that we have to have good habits, break the bad ones, and then we're going to have a steady, uniform goodness, correctness of conduct. So now I'm going to check out my answer choices and see which one matches correctness best. So my options are A, appearance, B, connection, C, attitude, D, righteousness, or E, code. Well, righteousness is going to be the closest one to correctness. Now, let's say that you really struggled with this sentence and couldn't quite figure out a good synonym for the word rectitude. Let's go ahead and try our backup strategy just in case that happened. So if I'm going to do that backup strategy, I'm going to check each answer choice, put it in for the word rectitude, and see if it fits. I'm going to start reading right here at the semicolon for each of these words. So A, appearance. Starting reading here. And that the contrary habit must be broken and good ones acquired and established before we can have any dependence on a steady, uniform appearance of conduct. Well, this passage isn't about appearances, right? It's about actually having good conduct. So that seems like it's not going to be the best choice. All right, let's try B, connection. And that the contrary habits must be broken and good ones acquired and established before we can have any dependence on a steady, uniform connection of conduct. That doesn't really make sense. C, attitude. And that the contrary habits must be broken and good ones acquired and established before we can have any dependence on a steady, uniform attitude of conduct. Well, we're not really talking about attitude here. Let's try D. And that the contrary habits must be broken and good ones acquired and established before we can have any dependence on a steady, uniform righteousness of conduct. That still seems to make sense, right? All right, let's try E. And that contrary habits must be broken and good ones acquired and established before we can have any dependence on a steady, uniform code of conduct. Now, answer choice E is why coming up with our own synonym first is our preferred vocab and context strategy. If I read code here in place of rectitude, I might be convinced that that could be the right answer, right? Especially because code of conduct is a familiar phrase. But righteousness is actually more accurate here. So if at all possible, make sure you go back to the passage and come up with your own synonym first. To wrap up, let's go ahead and review those two strategies. So ideally, when you read a passage, the first thing you're going to do is, before you look at the answer choices, come up with your own synonym and then match it to the best answer choice. If you're stuck on that and if you're confused by the passage, use the backup strategy, your second best option, which is to try all of the answer choices in the context of the passage. You should now be prepared to answer any vocab and context question you see on the SSAT.